Welcome to this week's edition of the Comic Hero Show. I'm your host, Victor Nunley, and I am the Comic Hero. Well, if you're like me, and most students at ULM, you're off for spring break. And if you're anyone else, I'm sorry. but, yeah, ULM's out for spring break, and I'm making the most of it by, I'm going to just go all out in the show. But don't worry, I'm not gonna say anything awful or anything like that. Like as I said a few episodes ago, I'm not a shock jock. I'm not a shock host. That's not what I do. But I'm looking forward to the Victor Rant segment coming up, and then right after that, the Comicology 101, which is going to be awesome because it's going to be one of Batman. So we have all that to cover. So without further ado, let the ranting begin.
What you talking about, Willis?
The first thing I want to talk about is the NBA playoffs. They just started on Saturday, and everyone's either in a game two or about to be a game three. As a matter of fact, looking at the score right now, and the Mavericks are winning against the San Antonio Spurs, 110 to 88. So RPL, rowdy, proud, loud, go Mavs. Yeah, to all the to all my viewers that are watching this that are San Antonio Spurs fans, I apologize, but I'm a Mavs fan. I've been a Dallas Mavericks fan since 1997. Um, and I know that they're an eight seed, and San Antonio's the number one seed in the West. And I know that they have the series is about to be tied at one, although the Spurs won the game one. But I know the Mavs gave that game away, but I don't. But the Mavs aren't really. They don't. If they if they if they play well in one game and then later on in the game just give it away, I can guarantee you that won't happen in the second game. So let's just hope. So to all my Dallas Mavericks fans watching, let's just hope that the Mavs win this series and knock off the number one seed. All right, next thing I want to talk about is next week's episode. Next week's episode, of course, is episode number 21. Um, and I hope everyone that's in the ULM Sound of Today are listening to this. Um, I want to do episode number 21 at the band picnic. This is something that I've always wanted to do. I've always wanted to do an episode where just about everyone in the Sound Today are my co-host. I mean, I'm very awesome. I'm very thrilled about episode 3 that that I did over at the field house where we all were, and Nate Nasworthy ended up peeking in. And then episode 8, the 6,000 Comics episode, where my co-hosts were David Oliver, James Red Hodge, and Mark Alva. But also with a special appearance by Stephen Taylor. But this is this is what I want. I just don't want to have only about 3, 4, maybe 5. I want more. And and uh, and if y'all are watching, any of y'all are watching this, I will make sure that I will get just about all of you in there. I promise I won't miss anyone. So let's make it happen. Episode 21, Band Picnic, next Friday, Friday, May 2nd, which is also the day that The Amazing Spider Man 2 comes out. And I would go out to see a midnight showing of it, but sorry, I'm still kind of rattled from the hearing about the that shooter at the midnight shooting in Aurora, Colorado. And because here's the thing: if you're a college student, if you're a high school student, even if you're just a moviegoer, that affects you. All right, that's all I want to rant about. So, but anyway, episode 21, Band Picnic, Friday, May 2nd. Let's make it happen. And I hope that I don't scare anyone off or discourage anyone from coming because it's like I always say, you don't have to read comic books. You don't even have to understand them to watch this show. All right, so let's just make it happen for next Friday. All right, that's all I want to rant about. Up next is the Comicology 101 segment. This week it is Batman, and I want to thank Kayla Sheremy from Shreveport, Louisiana, for suggesting this. So, without further ado, class is in session. Welcome back to Comicology 101. This week I'll be discussing The Dark Knight, Batman. Batman was created by artist Bob Kane and writer Bill Finger, and first appeared in Detective Comics number 27 in May of 1939. Originally referred to as the Bat-Man, and still referred to at times as the Batman, the character is additionally known as the Caped Crusader, the Dark Knight, and the world's greatest detective, among other titles. Batman is the secret identity of Bruce Wayne, an American billionaire, industrialist, and philanthropist. Having witnessed the murder of his parents as a child, he swore vengeance on criminals, an oath tempered with the greater ideal of justice. Wayne trains himself both physically and intellectually and dons a bat-themed costume in order to fight crime. Batman operates in the fictional Gotham City, assisted by various supporting characters including his crime-fighting partner, Robin, who we'll talk about later because there was more than one, his butler, Alfred Pennyworth, the police commissioner, Jim Gordon, and occasionally the heroine Batgirl, who we'll also talk about later because there was more than one. He fights an assortment of villains, often referred to as the Rogues Gallery, which includes the Joker, the Penguin, the Riddler, Two-Face, Ra's al Ghul, Scarecrow, Poison Ivy, and Catwoman, among many others. Unlike most superheroes, he does not possess any superpowers. He makes use of intellect, detective skills, science and technology, wealth, physical prowess, martial arts skills, an indomitable will, fear, and intimidation in his continuous war on crime. The first Batman story, The Case of the Chemical Syndicate, was published in Detective Comics number 27 in May of 1939. Finger said, and I quote, "Batman was originally written in the style of the pulps," end quote, and this influence was evident with Batman showing little remorse over killing or maiming criminals. Batman proved a hit character, and he received his own solo title in 1940 while continuing to star in Detective Comics. By that time, National, which was later called DC Comics, was the top-selling and most influential publisher in the industry. Batman and the company's other major hero, Superman, were the cornerstones of the company's success. The two characters were featured side by side as the stars of World's Finest Comics, which was originally titled World's Best Comics when it debuted in the fall of 1940. Creators included Jerry Robinson and Dick Sprang also worked on the strips during this period. Over the course of the first few Batman strips, elements were added to the character and the artistic depiction of Batman evolved. Kane noted that within 6 issues, he drew the character's jawline more pronounced and lengthened the ears on the costume. He said this, and I quote, "About a year later, he was almost a full figure, my mature Batman," end quote. Batman's characteristic utility belt was introduced in Detective Comics number 29 in July of 1939, followed by the boomerang-like Batarang and the first Bat-themed vehicle, the Batplane, in issue number 31 in September of 1939. The character's origin was revealed in number 33 in November of 1939, unfolding in a 2-page story that establishes the brooding persona of Batman, a character driven by the death of his parents. Written by Finger, it depicts a young Bruce Wayne witnessing his parents' murder at the hands of a mugger. Days later, at their grave, the child vows that, by the spirit of my parents, I will avenge their deaths by spending the rest of my life wearing on all criminals. The early pulp-inflicted portrayal of Batman started to soften in Detective Comics number 38 in April of 1940 with the introduction of Robin, Batman's kid sidekick. Robin was introduced based on Finger's suggestion Batman needed a Watson with whom Batman could talk. Sales doubled despite Kane's preference on a solo Batman, and it sparked a proliferation of kid sidekicks. The first issue of the solo spin-off series, Batman, was notably not only for introducing two of his most persistent enemies, the Joker and Catwoman, but for the story in which Batman shoots some monstrous giants to death. That story prompted editor Whitney Ellsworth to decree that the character could no longer kill or use a gun. By 1942, the writers and artists behind the Batman comic had established most of the basic elements of the Batman mythos. In the years following World War II, DC Comics adopted a post-war editorial direction that increasingly de-emphasized social commentary in favor of lighthearted juvenile fantasy. The impact of this editorial approach was evident in Batman comics of the post-war period, removed from the bleak and menacing world of the strips of the early 1940s. Batman was instead portrayed as a respectable citizen and a paternal figure that inhabited a bright and colorful environment. Batman was one of the few superhero characters to be continuously published as interest in the genre waned during the 1950s. In the story of the mightiest team in the world in Superman number 76 in June of 1952, Batman teams up with Superman for the first time and the pair discovers each other's secret identity. Following the success of this story, World's Finest Comics was revamped so that it featured stories starring both heroes together instead of the separate Batman and Superman features that had been running before. The team-up of the characters was a financial success in an era when those few and far between, and the series of stories ran until the book's cancellation in 1986. Batman comics were among those criticized when the comic book industry came under scrutiny with the publication of psychologist Frank Wertham's book Seduction of the Innocent in 1954. Wertham's thesis was that children imitated crimes committed in comic books, and that these works corrupt the morals of the youth. Wertham criticized Batman comics for their supposed homosexual overtones and argued that Batman and Robin were portrayed as lovers. Wertham's criticisms raised a public outcry in the 1950s, eventually leading to the establishment of the Comics Code Authority. The tendency towards a sunnier Batman in the post-war years intensified after the introduction of the Comics Code. Scholars have suggested that the characters of Batwoman in 1956 and the pre-Barbara Gordon Batgirl in 1961 were introduced in part to refute the allegations that Batman and Robin were gay, and that the stories took a campier, lighter feel. In the late 1950s, Batman stories gradually became more science fiction oriented, an attempt at mimicking the success of other DC characters that had dabbled in the genre. New characters such as Batwoman, Ace the Bat-Hound, and Batmite were introduced. Batman's adventures often involved odd transformations or bizarre space aliens. In 1960, Batman debuted as a member of the Justice League of America in The Brave and the Bold number 28, which came out in February of 1960, and went on to appear in several Justice League comic series starting later that same year. By 1964, sales on Batman titles had fallen drastically. Bob Kane noted that as a result, DC was, and I quote, planning to kill off Batman altogether. End quote. In response to this, editor Julius Schwartz was assigned to the Batman titles. He presided over drastic changes, beginning with Detective Comics number 327 in May of 1964, which was cover billed as the new look. Schwartz introduced changes designed to make Batman more contemporary and return him to his more detective-oriental stories. He brought in artist Carmine Infantino to overhaul the character. The Batmobile was redesigned, and Batman's costume was modified to incorporate a yellow ellipse behind the bat insignia. The space aliens, time travel, and characters in the 1950s such as Batwoman, Ace, and Batmite were retired. Batman's butler, Alfred, was killed off, though his death was quickly reversed, while a new female relative for the Wayne family, Harriet Cooper, came to live with Bruce Wayne and Dick Grayson, and Harriet Cooper was also the aunt of Dick Grayson. The debut of the Batman television series in 1966 had a profound influence on the character. The success of the series increased sales throughout the comic book industry, and Batman reached a circulation of close to 900,000 copies. Elements such as the character of Batgirl and the show's campy nature were introduced in the comics. The series also initiated the return of Alfred, Although both the comics and TV show were successful for a time, the camp approach eventually wore thin and the show was canceled in 1968. In the aftermath, the Batman comics themselves lost popularity once again. As Julia Schwartz noted, and I quote, "When the television show was a success, I was asked to be campy. And of course, when the show faded, so did the comic books." End quote. Starting in 1969, writer Dennis O'Neil and artist Neal Adams made a deliberate effort to distance Batman from the campy portrayal of the 1960s TV series and to return the character to his roots as a grim avenger of the night. O'Neil said his idea was to, quote, "simply take it back where it started. I went to the DC library and read some of the early stories. I tried to get a sense of what Kane and Finger were after." End quote. O'Neil and Adams first collaborated on the story The Secret of the Waiting Graves in Detective Comics number 395 in January of 1970. Few stories were true collaborations between O'Neil, Adams, Schwartz, and inker Dick Giordano, and in actuality these men were mixed and matched with various other creators during the 1970s. Nevertheless, the influence of their work was tremendous. Giordano said, and I quote, "We went back to a grimmer, darker Batman, and I think that's why these stories did so well." End quote. While the work of O'Neil and Adams was popular with the fans, the acclaim did little to help declining sales. The same held true with the similarly acclaimed run by writer Steve Englehart and penciler Marshall Rogers in Detective Comics number 471 through 476 in 1977 and 1978, respectively, which went on to influence the 1989 Batman movie and to be adapted for Batman the Animated Series, which debuted in 1992. Regardless, circulation continued to drop through the 1970s and 1980s, hitting an all-time low in 1985. Frank Miller's limited series The Dark Knight Returns, which tells the story of a 55-year-old Batman coming out of retirement and a possible future, reinvigorated the character. The Dark Knight Returns was a financial success and has since become one of the medium's most noted touchstones. The series also sparked a major resurgence in the character's popularity. That year, Dennis O'Neil took over as the editor of the Batman titles and set the template for the portrayal of Batman following DC's status quo-altering miniseries, Crisis on Infinite Earths. O'Neil operated under the assumption that he was hired to revamp the character, as a result tried to instill a different tone in the book that had gone before. One outcome of this new approach was the Year One storyline in Batman numbers 404 through 407 in February through May of 1987, in which Frank Miller and artist David Mazzucchelli redefined the character's origins. Writer Alan Moore and artist Brian Bolland continued this dark trend in 1988's 48-page one-shot Batman the Killing Joke, in which the Joker, attempting to drive Commissioner Gordon insane, cripples Gordon's daughter Barbara, and then kidnaps and tortures the commissioner physically and psychologically. In 1989, the first issue of Legends of the Dark Knight, the first new solo Batman title in nearly 50 years, sold close to 1 million copies. Many of the major Batman storylines since the 1990s have been intertitle crossovers that run for a number of issues. In 1993, DC published Nightfall. In the Nightfall storyline's first phase, the new villain Bane, or should I say, Bane, paralyzes Batman, leading Wayne to ask Jean-Paul Valley, aka Azrael, to take over the role. After the end of Nightfall, the storyline split in two directions, following both the Azrael Batman's adventures and Bruce Wayne's quest to become Batman once more. The story arcs realign in Night's End as Azrael becomes increasingly violent and is defeated by a healed Bruce Wayne. Wayne hands the Batman medal to Dick Grayson, then Nightwing, for an interim period, while Wayne trains to return to the role. Batman once again becomes a member of the Justice League during Grant Morrison's 1996 relaunch of the series titled JLA. While Batman contributes greatly to many of the team's successes, the Justice League is largely uninvolved as Batman and Gotham City face catastrophe in the decade's closing crossover arc. In 1998's Cataclysm storyline, Gotham City is devastated by an earthquake and ultimately cut off from the United States. Deprived of many of his technological resources, Batman fights to reclaim the city from legions of gangs during 1999's No Man's Land. Meanwhile, Batman's relationship with the Gotham City Police Department changed for the worse with the events of Batman Officer Down and Batman War Games War Crimes. Batman's longtime law enforcement allies Commissioner Gordon and Lieutenant Harvey Bullock are forced out of the police department in Officer Down, while in War Games and War Crimes saw Batman become a wanted fugitive after a contingency plan of his to neutralize Gotham City's criminal underworld is accidentally triggered, resulting in a massive gang war that ends with the sadistic Black Mask as the undisputed ruler of the city's criminal gangs. Other troubles come for Batman in the form of Lex Luthor, secretly behind the events of No Man's Land, who seeks revenge for Bruce Wayne canceling all of his company's government contracts upon Luthor being elected President of the United States. Luthor arranges for the murder of Batman's on-again, off-again love interest Vesper Fairchild, introduced in the mid-1990s during the Bruce Wayne Murderer and Bruce Wayne Fugitive story arcs. Though Batman is able to clear his name, he loses another ally in the form of his new bodyguard Sasha, who is recruited into the organization known as Checkmate, while stuck in prison due to her referral to turn in state evidence against her employer. While he was unable to prove that Luthor was behind the murder of Vesper, Batman does get his revenge with help from Talia al Ghul in Superman Batman number 1 through 6. Not only does he bring down Lex Luthor's presidency, but also engages in a hostile takeover of Luthor's corporate holdings, bankrupting the villain in the process. DC's 2005 limited series Identity Crisis reveals that JLA member Zatanna had edited Batman's memories to prevent him from stopping the League from lobotomizing Dr. Light after he raped Sue Dentney, who happens to be the wife of the Elongated Man. This served as a retcon for Batman's complete distrust for his fellow superheroes after he remembers which, under writers such as Mark Waid in the Tower of Babel arc in JLA, manifested itself in the form of Batman keeping extensive files on how to kill his fellow superheroes. Batman later creates the Brother Eye satellite surveillance system to watch over and, if necessary, kill the other heroes. It is eventually co-opted by Maxwell Lord, who then kills superhero Blue Beetle to keep him from alerting the Justice League of the existence of Batman's murderous creation. The revelation of Batman's creation and his tacit responsibility for Blue Beetle's death becomes a driving force in the lead up to the Infinite Crisis miniseries, which again restructures DC continuity. In Infinite Crisis number 7, Alexander Luthor Jr. mentions that in the newly rewritten history of New Earth, created in the previous issue, the murderer of Martha and Thomas Wayne, again Joe Chill, was captured, thus undoing the retcon created after Zero Hour. Batman and the team of superheroes destroyed Brother Eye and the OMACs, though at the very end, Batman reaches his apparent breaking point when Alexander Luthor Jr. seriously wounds Nightwing. Picking up a gun, Batman nearly shoots Luthor in order to avenge his former sidekick until Wonder Woman convinces him not to pull the trigger. Following Infinite Crisis, Bruce Wayne, Dick Grayson, having recovered from his wounds, and Tim Drake retraced the steps Bruce had taken when he originally left Gotham City to rebuild Batman. In the Face-to-Face storyline, Batman and Robin return to Gotham City after their year-long absence. Part of this absence is captured during the week 30 of the 52 series, which shows Batman fighting his inner demons. Later on in 52, Batman is shown undergoing an intense meditation ritual in Nanda Parbat. This becomes an important part of the regular Batman title, which reveals that Batman is reborn as a more effective crime fighter while undergoing this ritual, having hunted down and ate the last traces of fear in his mind. At the end of the Face-to-Face story arc, Batman officially adopts Tim, who had lost both of his parents at various points in the character's history, as his son. The follow-up story arc in Batman and Son, introduces Damian Wayne, who is Batman's son with Talia al Ghul. Batman, along with Superman and Wonder Woman, reforms the Justice League in the new Justice League of America series, and is leading the newest incarnation of the Outsiders. Grant Morrison's 2008 storyline, Batman R.I.P., featured Batman being physically and mentally broken by the enigmatic villain Black Glove, and attracted news coverage in advance of his highly promoted conclusion, which would speculate to feature the death of Bruce Wayne. However, though, Batman is shown to possibly perish at the end of the arc. The two-issue arc Last Rites which leads to the crossover event Final Crisis, shows that Batman survives his helicopter crash into the Gotham City River and returns to the Batcave, only to be summoned to the Hall of Justice by the JLA to help investigate the new god Orion's death. In the story, Batman is kidnapped by the new god granting goodness and mentally probed by Darkseid's minions as part of Darkseid's ultimately unsuccessful attempts to create clones of Bruce Wayne. The story ends with Batman retrieving the god-killing bullet used to kill Orion, setting up its use in Final Crisis. In the pages of Final Crisis itself, the world is plunged into despair by the evil new god Darkseid. In Final Crisis number 6, Batman confronts Darkseid and announces he will make a once-in-a-lifetime exception by using a firearm when facing the villain. Batman shoots Darkseid with a god-killing bullet just as Darkseid unleashes his Omega section upon Batman. Darkseid is killed and Batman is reduced to a charred skeleton. Final Crisis number 7 shows, however, that the Omega section in fact sends its victim's consciousness into the distant past. Wayne is shown witnessing the passing of the first man, Anthro. Wayne's death sets up the 3-issue Battle of the Cowl miniseries in which Wayne's ex-proteges compare for the right to assume the role of Batman, which concludes with Grayson becoming Batman, while Tim Drake takes over the identity of Red Robin. Dick and Damian continues as Batman and Robin in the crossover event Blackest Night. What appears to be Bruce's corpse is reanimated as a Black Lantern zombie, but is later shown that Bruce's corpse is one of Darkseid's failed Batman clones. Dick and Batman's other friends conclude that Bruce is alive. Bruce subsequently returns in Morrison's miniseries Batman the Return of Bruce Wayne, which depicts his travels through time from prehistory to present-day Gotham. Bruce's return set up Batman Incorporated, an ongoing series which focuses on Wayne's franchising the Batman identity across the globe, allowing Dick and Damian to continue as Gotham's dynamic duo. Bruce publicly announces that Wayne Enterprises will aid Batman on his mission, known as Batman Incorporated. Due to editorial mandate coinciding with DC's 2011 relaunch, however, Grayson is restored as Nightwing, with Wayne serving as the sole Batman once again. The relaunch also interrupts the publication of Batman Incorporated, which resumes its story in 2012, with changes to suit the new status quo. Now, as promised, I'm going to talk about all the Robins that served under Batman. The first Robin is Dick Grayson, formerly of the mother-father-son acrobat team, the Flying Graysons, until his parents fell to their deaths after their equipment was being tampered with at a show. He became Robin and was a founding member of the original Teen Titans, and later became Nightwing. The second Robin is Jason Todd. Fans hated him, and during a story arc called Death in the Family, in which the Joker brutally beats him, fans were given the opportunity to vote on whether he lived or he died, and of course fans voted for the latter. The next Robin is Tim Drake. He's probably one of the most popular Robins, and he was Robin for a while until his father found out, and he retired. Then his on-again, off-again love interest Stephanie Brown stepped in and became Robin until her alleged death in Detective Comics number 809, which prompted Tim Drake to return. Now he's known as Red Robin. And then the last Robin is Damian Wayne. He served as Robin under Dick Grayson and the Bruce Wayne Batman until his death in Batman Incorporated number 8. Batman's next sidekick would be Harper Row, but she didn't call herself Robin. She went by the name Bluebird. And I wouldn't mention Carrie Kelly, but she was Robin in The Dark Knight Returns, which has nothing to do with the current continuity of the Batman books. And now the Batgirls. The first Batgirl was Betty Kane, who was introduced in 1961, but discontinued later. The next Batgirl was Barbara Gordon, who was introduced at the same time of the character in the TV series Batman, and was Batgirl until the Killing Joke one-shot in which she was shot in the spine by the Joker. The next Batgirl was Cassandra Cain, who was mentored by Batman and pretty much the female counterpart to him not just by the name, but also by the demeanor and fighting skills. The next Batgirl was Stephanie Brown, who was mentored by Barbara Gordon and somehow back from the dead. She was a Batgirl until the New 52 was launched, and Barbara Gordon became Batgirl once again after she had surgery to repair her spine. And there you have it, Comicology 101 on Batman. Once again, I want to thank Kayla Sherby for giving me that suggestion on this week's Comicology 101 segment. All right, so without further ado, let's get to the comics I bought this week. Comic books I bought this week. All right, up first is Original Sin number 0. Now, this is pretty much a prelude to the new Marvel series that's coming out by that same name. And, in this issue, we find out that, Nova in his book has been so hell bent on trying to figure out who the Watcher really is. But then he's going to find out that there's actually more than one Watcher. And Watchers are, they observe, they record, but they don't interfere and they don't talk. And I don't know if Nova's going to try to ask him all kinds of questions or whatnot. But it would be funny if he asked him a bunch of questions, they just teleported him back to Earth. Because this Nova's in his early teens. He's not his late teens, early 20s like Richard Rider was. And his book is great, by the way. All right, Original Sin number 0. Up next is Superman number 30. Now, the last issue, he finds out that there was an alien race who had, who pretty much, they pretty much they pretty much, tried to mess with the delinquency of a minor, and they gave them powers and whatnot, and it's irreversible. They can't change them back. But then we find out that the person that was behind all of this um, will happen to be Starfire's sister, Blackfire, and some other person, some other alien being, and I think in this issue, he and Starfire are going to go after those people, or is it going to be the opposite? Up next is The Flash number 30. I'm very excited about this book because Robert Venditti and Van Jensen, who also write issues of Green Lantern Corps. They're now writing this book as well, and the penciler is Brent Booth. I tell you, I have loved Brent Booth's artwork ever since he penciled Fantastic Four back in the mid '90s. It's wonderful, and it's going into a new direction, and I think it's going to debut the new 52 version of a former Flash. And who I mean by that, I mean Wally West, who in the also in the previous DC universe, Wally West is Barry Allen's nephew by marriage. All right, up next is Teen Titans number 30. Now, the last issue, the Teen Titans, by the help of Bar Tours, well, we find out that Kid Flash, his real name isn't Bart Allen, it was actually Bar Tor. Well, we find out that his sister, with the help of his sister, they end up getting back to their own time. And the first thing they find other Teen Titan members, Bunker and Beast Boy, uh, going after these bad guys. But then they come back and beat them, and then their next objective, they're going up against the villain named Harvest, um, who has pretty much destroyed the lives of a whole bunch of superpowered teenagers. And this is gonna be interesting because keep in mind that the Superboy that they think is Con-El, it's actually John Lane Kent, who is actually Superman and Lois Lane's son from an alternate timeline. And this Superboy considers Harvest to be a father, and it's going to be very interesting when they find out. I mean, when they start finding what Superboy is going to do. Although I think he's going to take the side of Harvest, to be honest. All right, up next is Red Lanterns number 30. It's official. Supergirl is now a Red Lantern, and now starts a new story arc called Judgment Day, and I think Atrocitus is going to have a lot to do with it. I think his Cat's going to have a lot to do with it. And I tell you, the you think Red Lanterns were united? Think again. Up next is Fantastic Four number 3. This is part 3 of the opening story arc called "The End of the Fantastic Four." And the Fantastic Four, one thing about them, they were always united, but they always had their differences. They always, they were always verbal towards each other and all this. And I think it's getting worse because I think in this issue, a member leaves the group. Yeah, Mr. Fantastic Four. When do we see that? All right, up next is Guardians of the Galaxy number 14. This is the double-sized anniversary issue, and this is also the aftermath of the trial of Jean Grey. Um, I'll be honest with you, I really don't know what was going on because at the time I stopped reading when I stopped reading comics for or took a break from buying them. Um, I missed a lot of issues of both Guardians of the Galaxy and All New X Men. But all I do know is that they've added 2 new members. They've added Captain Marvel and Venom. Now you're probably thinking, why Venom? Well, you have to remember, Venom did start out, the alien symbiote, yeah, that Flash Thompson wears. It it is alien, therefore it's from another planet. So but as far as Flash Thompson as Venom being a member of Guardians of the Galaxy, I don't know. I don't know exactly what Brian Michael Bendis is trying to do here. But come on, it's Brian Michael Bendis. This is one of the greatest comic book writers of all time. I mean, he is like he has done wonders on Avengers, Ultimate Spider-Man, and and right now he's doing a great job on Guardians of the Galaxy. He's making it a very uh, I mean, he's making he's making it a great relevant book to read. I mean, I don't see this getting canceled anytime soon, and I can't wait to read this to see what what's going to happen or the new direction the Guardians of the Galaxy are going to take. Oh, by the way, speaking of Guardians of the Galaxy, they still have the same members. Nobody's left. Oh, and Guardians of the Galaxy in theaters August 1st. I'm there. All right, and lastly, Forever Evil number 6. Um, as I've said in earlier issues, or early episodes rather, the Batman, Lex Luthor, and Bizarro are pretty much taking sides, and they're going to, and it's not just them; it's some other folks, and they're going to go up against the Crime Syndicate, who have pretty much decimated the DC universe, including Nightwing here. Whether he's going to live or he's going to die, I really don't know, but I can't wait to read it to find out. Although there have been rumors going on that Nightwing is indeed going to die, which kind of breaks my heart considering he's the first ever Robin. Oh, by the way, Nightwing, that's Dick Grayson. All right. That's 8 I bought today, bringing the total to 6,190 comics. Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Comic Hero Show. As I said, as I pleaded before in the Victor Rant segment, I want to do episode number 21 over at the band picnic next Friday at the Levee in Monroe. So if you're, as I've said before, if you're a ULM Sound It Today member and you plan on being here, you will be my co-host. And I hope I don't, and I'm just hoping that I don't discourage anyone from coming because I want this to be. I mean, it's my show, but I want everyone there that's going to be coming to be involved in some shape, form, or matter. But as far as being co-host go, and I also want to debut a limited segment on there called a Q&A, and all it is I'm going all it is you're going to be asking questions, and I'm going to try to answer them the best of my ability. All right, so I don't know what next week's comicology segment is going to be. I don't know if there's going to be a comicology segment. Um, but either way, I just know next week's episode is going to be better than this one. And as I've said before, if you have any questions or comments, anything you think is going to make the show better, please let me know. I'm serious about this. Okay. All right. That's all. That's all I have for this week. I'm Victor Nolly. I'm the Comic Hero. We'll see you next week. Till then, be safe, be blessed, be a hero.